Good evening, viewers and listeners of Concerned Citizens Media. Thank you again for coming back. I always appreciate your presence. Today is March 28, 2023. I have several news updates to share with you. Uh, Today is my focus is on Prime Minister speech for Ethiopian Parliament for 11th regular session. So I will start with that one and then cover France protests over pension age limit increase. Also, the shooting in Nashville, Tennessee is a tragedy. Keep coming back here in the United States. The continued protests in Israel over judicial reform, plus other news are included on today's presentation. Thank you again for coming back. So I will start with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia's speech to the parliament. Uh, is an interesting one and some courage, some force is seen from some parliament members in challenging the prime minister's and his failure in leadership. Even Mr. Christian Tadele from Amara National Movement asked him if he is considering resigning. There is a bold move from parliament member to ask such a question. We have been missing such courageous movement, courageous strengths from parliament member. Usually they just raise their hand and clap their hands for approval, no challenge to the prime minister. This is common in Ethiopia. So now we see some challenge to the prime minister, uh, and also is a ridiculous answer for these questions. But let's start with his statement on press freedom and media freedom, plus on the importance of peace in Ethiopia. So it's uh, very encouraging to see the tone, the change of tone, especially when he's talking about peace, importance, the importance of peace in that country, and for the security of Ethiopia and the Ethiopians. So that's encouraging to see. It's a change of tones in the previous speeches when, especially during the war with Tigray. So he's completely a different person. It looks like Martin Luther King here when he's talking uh, about the importance of peace and how Ethiopians must work for peace and security. All this, but his speech about media and media freedom is very serious warning. Uh, it is an indication that he might crack down again, just like before, on media and journalists covering his, his leadership. So that's a warning. It's a very serious criticism of media and media freedom. Let's listen to it's an Amharic, but in general sense, it is what I said is about media freedom and about social media and advising Ethiopians to be selective to what they are listening, which is good advice. But I don't think that his intention is to advise Ethiopians. His intention is to show his readiness to crack down on media and journalists like he did before on OMN and Ethio Forum and other medias. Uh, so let's listen.
ያን በሚመለከት ለተነሳው ጥያቄ ሚዲያ የምርጫ አያው ነው። ሚዲያ ፓራዶክስ ኦፍ ቾይስ ነው። በጣም በርካታ ሚዲያዎች ከወትሮ በተለየ መንገድ በዓለም ላይም በእኛም ሀገር በስፋት አሉ። ሰው መርጦ መስማት አለበት። መርጦ መስማት ካልቻለ ያልተገቡ መርዞች ወደ ውስጡ ይወስዳል። ሁሉ አማራሽን ወደ ገበያ አታውጧት የሚባለው ያየችውን ሁሉ ልግዛ ስለምትል ነው። በዩቱብ ያየነውን ሁሉ ለመስማት መሞከር፣ ለማየት መሞከር አደገኛ ነው። መርጠን ታማኝ የሆኑ ጠቃሚ አስተማሪ ጉዳዮችን የሚያሰራጩ ሚዲያዎች መጠቀም ያስፈልጋል። ከዚህ አንጻር አድማጩም ኃላፊነት አለበት ማለት ነው። መርጦ ለይቶ ማድመጥን ካልቻለ ሚዲያ ስለሆነ ብቻ የሚደመጥ ከሆነ አብዛኛው ቅድም እንዳልኩት በመተላለፍ ፖለቲካ፣ በሴራ ፖለቲካ የተመሰረተ እነዚህ ኃይሎች ፋይናንስ የሚያደርጉት ሚዲያ ስለሆነ ያልተስተካከለ ዘገባ እንድናደምጥ ያደርጋል። ሁለተኛው የሚዲያ ነጻነት የሚባለው ጉዳይ እስከምን ድረስ ነው? የማባላት ነጻነት፣ የመዋሸት ነጻነት፣ ጦርነት የመቀስቀስ ነጻነት ማለት ነው ወይ? የሚዲያ ነጻነት፣ የእምነት ነጻነት፣ የሀገር ነጻነት የሚባለው ጉዳይ ጠቅልሎ ቀንበር መጣል ማለት አይደለም። ኔጌቲቭ የሆነውን ፍሪደም ወደ ፖዚቲቭ ፍሪደም ማምጣት ነው። ሰው የተሸከመልንን ቀንበር እኛ ለመሸከም መወሰን እንጂ ቀንበር አልቦ መሆን አይደለም።
Okay, that's about media freedom and advice to Ethiopians to what they are listening. You know, something on YouTube or different social media means is, you know, they're supposed to listen. He says so many poisonous stuff in the media. So he's advising in another sense Ethiopians to be selective to what they are listening, to, you know, avoid poison pills from the propaganda, lies, and warmongering going on media, which is it makes sense in certain area. Yes, all medias are not fact based. Some are just attempting to get the views, the number of viewers. So they just put anything, any picture, or somebody bleeding, or somebody just to get attraction. So yes, be selective, which is good advice. And the other thing is he is, you know, worried about how the media has expanded the freedom of media, freedom of religion, and so he is concerned about that one. And he's telling us there must be a limitation on media freedom and how much they can criticize the government, his government. Can they call upon him to resign? Can challenge him? So he's just giving us a warning about the freedom we are enjoying in the United States. You know, how the media in Ethiopia, journalists feel comfortable about this speech. This is a very serious speech, really. As we know from the past experience under his leadership, he cracked down on so many media, shut down OMN, shut down Ethio Forum and others, plus intimidation on journalists, detention of journalists, torture of journalists. All these are happen under his watch. So he's giving us additional warning, serious warning, you know, for the expression of freedom and media freedom, and a warning for journalists to be careful, not to go far. So we'll see. Let's continue about his speech about the importance of peace and the security for Ethiopia and the Ethiopians. As I said, he looks like Martin Luther King when he's preaching this, thing about peace. Is yes, peace is paramount, very essential for any kind of business. But really, he want peace if he was not forced by strings of TPLF and by external pressure from African Union and the USA and the European Union. I don't think so. Abiy is not that kind of person. He was squeezed financially, politically, economically, and socially. He was challenged. So that's why he's forced to sign a peace deal. And we know what he was saying during the war. You cannot expect such change of tone from this person, but it's happening now. He is a preacher. He's telling us about the importance of peace, and Ethiopians must work hard for peace, stability. Let's listen to that one, and I will continue reading other news material.
ሰላም ከጦርነት ያልተናነሰ ስራ ትጋት ይጠይቃል። እንዲሁ በከንቱ አይመጣም። በውሃ ላይ ዳክዬ ስትዋኝ አይታችሁ ከሆነ ምንም አይነት እንቅስቃሴ ያለ አይመስልም። ሰላማዊ ጉዞ የምታደርግ አይመስለው። ነገር ግን ወደ ውስጥ ገብታችሁ ብታዩ ያንን ሰላም መሰለ ጉዞ ለመጓዝ በእግሯ በጣም በርካታ ስራ ትሰራለች። የረጋ ሰላማዊ ነገር እንዲሁ በነፃ አይመጣም፣ በስራ ነው የሚመጣው። ትጋት ስራ ይፈልጋል። በተለይ ደግሞ አዎንታዊ ሰላም ፖዚቲቭ ፒስ በኮርሲቭ ፎርስ ወይም በኃይል ብቻ የሚረጋገጥ አይደለም። ፖዚቲቭ ሰላም የምንሻ ኃይሎች ብዙ ከኛ ይቅር ከሰላም የምናተርፈው ይበልጣል ብለን ማመን ይጠይቃል። አንዳንድ ጊዜ ለሰላም የሚደረገው እንቅስቃሴ የነበረውን ግጭት የነበረውን እልህ አስጨራሽ ሂደት በመዘንጋት ተደርጎ መወሰድ የለበትም። የነበረው ሂደት በጣም አሳዛኝ መሆኑ እየታወቀ ያንን አሳዛኝ ሁኔታ ከማቆየትና ከማዝለቅ የሚሻለውን ነገር ለማምጣት ለሰላም ብንሰራ ይሻላል በሚል እሳቤ የሚደረግ መሆኑን በክብር ልገልጽላችሁ እፈልጋለሁ። እና ሰላምን በሚመለከት ሁላችንም ከልብ በአዎንታዊ እሳቤ ከኛ ይቅር በሚል አብረን እንድንተጋ አደራላለሁ። እናንተ ሰላምን የማትደግፉና ለሰላም የማትቆሙ ከሆነ ከዚያ በታች ያለው ማህበረሰብ በምን ያክል ደረጃ ሰላም ማስፈን እንደሚቸገር ለእናንተ መንገር አያስፈልግም። ምን ጊዜም ሰላም ሲባል የአንድ ሰው ህይወት ማትረፍ ስለሆነ እኛ ቀድመን ግንባር ቀደም ሆነን ለዚያ ሰላም የምንተጋ መሆን አለብን።
This is surprising, really, to hear from Prime Minister.
Aren't you guys tired of covering this? Aren't you guys tired of being...
Okay, I'll come back to this one. This is about the school shooting. The school tragedy happened, I think, yesterday in Nashville, Tennessee. She's asking us, aren't you tired of this tragic event keep coming to the United States? Yes, I'm tired of this. So Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is talking about peace, and he's comparing to war. And in the same way, peace needs more effort to stabilize, to save life, even the life of one individual. Really, yes, that is true. So he is advising the parliament members, MEPs, to work hard for peace and stability. And he is comparing the duck on the water. He's saying when she's moving on the water, she seems she's doing nothing. But when you watch under the water, in the water, her feet is doing several activity to keep her movement peacefully above the water. So he's telling us war need positive thinking and very active engagement, forgiveness, and working hard to keep it. Yes, that is true. And I hope this change of tone about peace instead of war will continue in Ethiopia. This is very different person, very different prime minister now. He has been waging a war since he came to power in Oromia, since 2018. I'm surprised to hear from such person about peace. If really, a preacher for peace, he should have started in Oromia in 2018 and figure out to end. But he was waging that war since 2018. Then again, he added the Tigray war. So, as I said, he might be forced to say these things, challenged by all circumstances, financial, political, diplomatic isolation, and so many other factors. Now he's talking nice. We appreciate, we are encouraged to see the change of tones. So that's a good thing. And I hope all MEPs listen to him and help him in stabilizing peace and security for all Ethiopians, especially in creating accountability in that country. So many deaths unaccounted for, so many crimes unaccounted for under his leadership. People are just shooting, killing people, burning human being alive inside their house, and still enjoying life without any accountability, despite available evidence on the video and other evidences. So we hope to see accountability and peace and stability, security for Ethiopians. Okay, let's continue in today's parliament session. What Addis Standard has on the Prime Minister and BBC Two. Let's read quickly one from Addis Standard. It says Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed endures tough questions from MEPs, including on whether he would consider to resign. Members of Parliament are forwarding tough questions to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who is at the House to present the government's 6-month report for the current fiscal year to the House of People's Representatives, HOPR, at the 11th regular session of the House. Parliamentarians have so far asked critical questions, including, but not limited to, lack of peace and security throughout the country, the rising cost of living, lack of safety and security of civilians, the country's sovereignty, lack of good governance and development. If it happened in the United States or England or somewhere else, this prime minister or the one on the government position will not stay in power. If these all things, what is mentioned by Addis Standard, happen in the country, there is no way they can stay in power. But in Ethiopia, something different. Christian Tadele, an MEP representing the opposition national movement of Amhara, NAMA, has asked the Prime Minister on whether he is considering to resign in the face of what the MEP said was presiding over a government accused of gross human rights violations. How ready are you to be held accountable for crimes against humanity and identity-based crimes of genocide, ethnic cleansing, and identity theft, MEP Christian said. This is a very serious accusation. The MEP also blamed the Prime Minister that instead of responding to questions asked, he deflected into comments that denigrate the questioners, blaming questioners of hating the nation he came from or plotting to stage a coup. When I ask you this question, it is not out of hatred for the nation you represent, he said. Furthermore, MEP Christian charged the government of being the primary source of insecurity in the country. The challenge is to the Christian. Are you part of the government or not? Christian Tadali is part of the government. He's a coalition. He is getting salary. So Abiy only is not to be blamed. Other MEP have confronted the Prime Minister with questions of the gradual erosion of solidarity among nations, proliferation of armed forces and illegal weapons, lack of free movement of civilians in various parts of the country. Earlier, at the start of the questions session, MEP Abdusalam Hussein has asked the Prime Minister on whether or the government has any plan to resolve the ongoing militarized conflict in Oromia regional state after recent calls to end the conflict through peaceful resolution. In the last 3 years in the Oromia region, in West and South Oromia, many lives and properties have been and continue to be destroyed in the ongoing conflict with the armed forces. According to the Oromia regional government's call for a peaceful resolution of this conflict, and despite a positive response by the leadership of OLF Shane of accepting the call, no meaningful peace process has been undertaken or perceived to be undertaken by either side. What kind of strategy is the federal government following to solve the problem that caused the lack of peace and to bring real peace? He asked. Moga Ababulga, another MEP, has raised concern on what he said were the proliferation of illegal armed forces and the illegal weapons from different parts of the country being organized into Addis Ababa city to make our capital a center of violence and chaos, including through campaigning and financing to take power from the government that was built by sacrifice of the people. MEP Moga asked the Prime Minister what is being done by the government to fight these forces of destruction. MEP Simeng Sahlu tackled the growing problem of bringing prosperity between Amara and Oromia regions and polarizing statement from politicians of the two regions. There is a sense of confusion, she said, adding that in the Oromia region, displacement, persecution, and deaths are still continuing. She also raised the issues of people from the Amara region being prevented from entering Addis Ababa, including patients who were sent to Addis Ababa for treatment but died on the way because they were prevented from the city. Additionally, farmers are still not selling their produce to the market, especially to Addis Ababa, she said. Dr. Kafana Ifa, another MEP, asked about parties who are vehemently opposed to the prospect of peace between the federal government and the TPLF, as well as possibilities of peace between the government and the Oromo Liberation Army, or OLA. What do these people lose if there is a peace? What do they lose if there is a peace with Shane, as the government call it? He asked and stated the large-scale destruction and damage caused by the war in the Oromia region on the economy, politics, and the social life. The people are being abused a lot. Recently, the Oromia national regional government has called for peace with the militant operating in the Oromia region, he said, and asked where this call for peace reached so far, and that people are eagerly waiting for this peace negotiation, including with prayers. MEP Jambar Ainale confronted the Prime Minister that his government is working to dismantle the country, an idea the MVP said has been accepted widely by many people and even among the leadership. He also said that there were widespread beliefs that some elements within the government are planning to dismantle the country and that the Prosperity Party has betrayed the country and the people. That's Prime Minister is saying that. So when you see all these challenges, you see some kind of encouragement and courage from those representing the people. The people, they choose them or elected them to be their MEPs, which is good. Instead of just keep coming back to the parliament and raising their hand to approve declaration of Shane or TPLF as a terrorist list or waging a war. So no discussion at all. But now I see some bold move from this MEP, and they should continue to challenge whoever in the leadership. This one, couple of from BBC. This one, let's say BBC also saying something about today's parliament. Abiy hails peace deal to talk to other armed groups. Ethiopia Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has called the peace deal signed between his government and the fighters from the northern Tigray region a positive step, and said his government would also sit down with other armed groups. Yes, which is good, encouraging statement, but don't try to cheat people. Prosperity Party met many times with OLA officials in the past, even slaughtered so many animals, eat together, but finally they just go back to their circle. No agreement at all. So hopefully this time is true. Mr. Abiy was addressing member of parliament on Tuesday in Addis Ababa. During this session, a number of lawmakers raised concerns about growing insecurity in other parts of the country, pervasive corruptions, and the cost of living crisis. Several efforts have been made in recent months to reach out to the Oromo Liberation Front, an insurgent group operating in the country's Oromia region, to make a peaceful resolution, he said. Okay, I never heard of this. There hasn't been any immediate reaction from the OLF regarding the Prime Minister's claim. Yeah, I never heard. The only thing I heard is degrading words like Shane, and Shane has no leadership. Shane are fighting, siding with different, region. Wallaga, Shoa, blah, blah. This is, I heard from the Prime Minister, but I didn't hear his engagement with Ole. The 2-year civil war in Tigray and the neighboring regions is believed to have claimed more than 500,000 lives. Right violations, some of which, according to the UN, could amount to war crimes, have repeatedly been reported. Mr. Abiy Ahmed said a lot more had to be done to achieve total peace in the country's north. It takes time to heal positive conflict scars, he added. Peace, much like war, needs bravery. That's true. An opposition lawmaker asked if Mr. Abiy would be ready to face accountability for serious crimes committed during conflict, including ethnic cleansing, and whether he would resign in the footsteps of his predecessor Haile Mariam Desalegn in the face of increasing public frustration. The Prime Minister dismissed the suggestion. He added that his administration was working on ensuring transitional justice in the wake of brutal conflict. In his lengthy address, the Prime Minister criticized some media outlets without naming them, which he said were forces of distraction. Ethiopia's press freedom has deteriorated in recent years, according to rights watchdog. This is good news. This is good news. IMF team in Ethiopia. This is good news. Now stability is coming to Ethiopia. The only problem is the war we have in Oromia. If that one is settled, Ethiopia will have more opportunity to borrow from IMF or to get some reduction in interest, whatever, a good opportunity for engagement with international uh, community, including IMF. This is also, I think, okay, let me read what it says. International Monetary Fund officials are in Ethiopia this week doing technical work to prepare for a potential IMF-supported program for the East African country, an IMF spokesperson said on Monday. The IMF has received a request for financial assistance from Ethiopian authorities to support its economic reforms, the spokesperson said, noting the country had been hit by multiple shocks, including droughts, the COVID-19 pandemic, domestic conflicts, and the impact of Russia's war in Ukraine. A potential program would support the authorities' homegrown economic reform program and help Ethiopia stabilize its economy so that it can meet its economic, humanitarian, and social challenges, create jobs, and reduce poverty, the spokesperson said. This week's technical discussions follow ongoing discussions between the IMF and the Ethiopian authorities on how to best address humanitarian and economic challenges, the spokesperson added. Bloomberg, which first reported the IMF visit, said officials from the global lead lender were expected to stay 10 days. The IMF said it welcomed Ethiopia's strong progress toward restoring lasting peace and stability through the cessation of hostilities agreement, and said implementation had progressed well, including through restoration of humanitarian assistance and basic service to Tigray. Progress on the IMF program and Ethiopia's request for debt relief under the Group of 20 Common Framework had been stalled due to, in part, to the conflict in Tigray. The United States, the biggest shareholder in the IMF, is working to repair ties after outspoken criticism of alleged atrocities by Ethiopian forces and their allies during the Tigray War, which killed tens of thousands of people before a peace accord was reached last November. So this is a very positive development for Ethiopia give them a chance, and debt reduction, and give them the chance to borrow money and use it for peace, security, and the humanitarian case. I hope, to ease burden from Ethiopians. I hope so. So this is a positive news. So stability is very essential to deal with the international community, to start uh, our diplomatic relation, get good engagement for our students, for visitors, for any kind of activity. Give hope for the young generation who are in university, who are in high school, to go to United States, to go to Canada, Australia, UK, France, and uh, other global communities or countries get their education and advance their education. So it's stability and peace very essential, and so this is the start of that road. Good engagement with IMF is a beginning. Kenya president condemned opposition protests. Kenya recently has been challenged by opposition protests. Kenya's President William Ruto has condemned Monday's opposition protests that turned violent and led to the damage of property, including the invasion of a farm belonging to former President Uhuru Kenyatta's family. Addressing Kenyans living in Berlin, President Ruto said he would not allow impunity to be part of the country's discourse. He vowed to ensure security for all Kenyans and businesses by giving the police the independence of enforcing law and order in the country. A church and a mosque in Nairobi were destroyed by unknown assailants on Monday night after protesters engaged police in running battles. Religious leaders have condemned Monday's attack, urging politicians to consider dialogue and preach peace. Veterans opposition leader Raila Odinga has accused the state of sponsoring violence so that protests degenerate into chaos and lead to death. Mr. Odinga says the opposition will not relent with their agitation for a review of the 2022 elections, constitution of the Electoral Commission, and addressing the rise in the cost of living. That is again BBC. African women are key to future growth, said US Vice President Kamala Harris. Women in Africa must be given the opportunity to participate equally in all spheres of life, including in leadership positions, says US Vice President Kamala Harris. It is key to maximizing global growth and opportunity, she told students in Ghana's capital, Accra, promising that the US will closely work with its partners to bridge the gender gap. The US first female vice president is on a three-nation tour of the continent. Speaking on Tuesday, she praised Africa's ingenuity and creativity, but emphasized the need to address challenges including security, barriers to economic growth, and the impact of climate change. She has already announced $100 million or 81 million euro in funding for the fight against violent extremism. Internet facilities will also be invested in by the US to promote economic growth on the continent, she said. Let us dream with ambition and lead with conviction. the politician told young people in Accra. A summit on democracy is being organized in Zambia, where Mrs. Harris will visit after Ghana and Tanzania. The US government says it will continue to work with democratic governments on the continent in line with the aspiration of Africans. BBC. There we go. Maybe this is the last one. Publication of final rule on non-immigrant visa fee increase. This is media note, office of the spokesperson. The Department of State committed to facilitating legitimate travel to the United States for both immigrant and non-immigrant travelers. The Department of State published a final rule regarding increases to certain non-immigrant visa application (NIV) processing fee and the border crossing card (BCC) for Mexican citizens aged 15 and over. These increases were published in the Federal Register on March 28, 2023, and will be effective on May 30, 2023. The fee for visitor visas for business or tourism B1, B2S, and BCCS, and other non-petition based NIV, such as student and exchange visitor visas, will increase from $160 to $185. The fee for certain petition-based non-immigrant visas for temporary workers HL, O, P, Q, and R categories will increase from $190 to $205. The fee for a treaty trader, treaty investor, and a treaty applicant in a specialty occupation E category will increase from $205 to $315. NIV fees are set based on the actual cost of providing NIV services and are determined after conducting a study of the cost of these services. The department uses an activity-based costing ABC methodology to calculate annually the cost of providing consular services, including visa services. The fees for most non-petition-based NIVs were last updated in 2012, and certain other NIV fees were last updated in 2014. Other consular fees are not affected by this rule, including the waiver of the 2-year residency required fee for certain exchange visitors. Visas for work and tourism are essential to President Biden's foreign policy, and we recognize the critical role international traveler plays in the U.S. economy. So that is change in a visa fee for non-immigrant visa. So that's all I have for today's reading. So let's continue the videos I selected for today. The first one, as I said, about the tragedy happened in Nashville, Tennessee. 3 students and 3 adults killed by this transgender person who has attended the school, in the same school. He came back and destroy life. So that's a tragedy keep coming to the United States schools and other places. Let's listen.
Here and having to cover all of these mass shootings. I'm from Highland Park, Illinois. My son and I survived a mass shooting over the summer. I am in Tennessee on a family vacation with my son, visiting my sister-in-law. I have been lobbying in D.C. since we survived a mass shooting in July. I have met with over 130 lawmakers. How is this still happening? How are our children still dying, and why are we failing them? Gun violence is the #1 killer of children and teens. It has overtaken cars. Assault weapons are contributing to the border crisis and fentanyl. We are arming cartels with our guns and our loose gun laws, and these shootings and these mass shootings will continue to happen until our lawmakers step up and pass gun safety legislation. I'm pretty sure this was an unsecured weapon that this teenager got a hold of. We can't even pass gun safety, like safe storage laws in this country to protect kids from getting a hold of weapons that they shoot each other with. Aren't you guys tired of this?
Yeah,
You guys sick of it?
I'm sick of it.
We have
Tired
to do
of
something.
it,
We all
really.
have to call our lawmakers, and we all have to make our lawmakers make change now, or this is going to keep happening, and it's going to be your kid, and your kid, and your kid, and your kid next, because it's just a matter of time.
But Republicans mostly, they don't care. They don't care really. They don't listen to this concern and the others.
Sleepwear for the soft.
That's why these things keep coming back.
When she's really good, ask now what? Then invest in her goals with Prudential.
Okay,
This is becoming a major crisis for the government.
This is France over pension
Starting
age
as a
increase.
peaceful demonstration, once again turning into running battles on the streets of Paris.
President Macron always knew he'd be in for a turbulent ride with his pension reforms. It's a controversial issue. But these demonstrations show no sign of stopping. And if anything, they're becoming angrier and more volatile.
It may have only been a hardcore of the tens of thousands of demonstrators who clashed with the police. But the fury here is a reflection of the profound anger at the raising of the retirement age from 62 to 64.
People are already in trouble. They cannot pay the gas for the car. They cannot pay so many things. And now you tell them that they're going to work 2 years more, 3 years more sometimes.
The government claims with an aging population, the present system is unaffordable. But by forcing through the legislation with special constitutional powers and bypassing Parliament, President Macron has provoked fury across the nation, which is now in full protest.
A lot of people are angry, but I think I feel totally cheated upon. That is, I voted, I used the democratic system, and this is not at all what's happening.
This is also a significant distraction for France and the European Union, at a time when its focus should be on Ukraine and the climate emergency. The Republic is fighting with itself over how long it should work. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Paris.
Demonstrations in Israel continued into the night, capping a day of unprecedented nationwide strikes that paralyzed the country and pushed Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu into suspending his judicial overhaul plan. Weeks of mass protests have tipped the country into its most severe domestic crisis in years. Earlier, Netanyahu told the nation he was pausing the plan.
מתוך אחריות לאומית, מתוך הרצון למנוע את הקרע בעם, החלטתי להשהות את הקריאה השנייה והשלישית של החוק במושב הזה של הכנסת, כדי לתת זמן לנסות להגיע לאותה הסכמה רחבה לקראת החקיקה במהלך הכנסת הבאה.
The plan, which would give Netanyahu's government greater power to handpick judges, including those presiding over his corruption trial, has pitted liberal and secular Jewish Israelis against more right-wing and religiously conservative factions, even raising fears of a civil war, much to American alarm.
So we welcome this announcement as an opportunity to create additional time and space for compromise.
But after Netanyahu announced he was delaying his contentious judicial overhaul, pro- and anti-Israeli government protesters faced off in Tel Aviv. Despite Netanyahu's concession, protest leaders have called for demonstrations to continue until he shelves the legislation entirely.
Okay, so that's the last one. So Israel never seen such extended protests against the government, against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He tried to reform the judicial system, so he want to control justice. He want to appoint the justice, and the people say this is not democracy. This is a sign of dictatorship. So they challenged him. They are fighting against him, and they force him to pause for now. But as you heard, they will continue until he totally give up on this plan. We'll see. But it has been like this for almost a month, I think, since he introduced this reform bill. The only thing we can learn from this is when the people come together, when they share their voice, we stand together, raise their concern together, the government has no power. Finally, the government will give power to the people. The people can force the government to give up because they are elected by the people. But the people, if they are divided, the government can do whatever they want to do. They can change it from democratic government into dictatorial, as Abiy Ahmed slowly changed it in Ethiopia from 2018, from all these nice speeches or all those promises, he turned the country upside down, and he made the country the land of unaccountability. Because Ethiopians are silent, they allowed him. They fear of the government. They should have come out like Israelis, France, or Kenyans demand election on the timely basis and challenge the government for accountability. He cannot play that like that. Prime Minister cannot give any answer for the hungry people, for the frustrated people, for the insecure people. But he knows Ethiopians are not united. Ethiopians are not coming together. They have different agenda. So he can play around. He can be easily a dictatorship if he want to. He's on the way anyway. So that's all I'm going to say today. And I hope the Prime Minister's speech about peace and security and, will be fruitful, will be done very quickly to include the situation in Oromia. Oromia is burning, Oromos are dying, and Oromia is suffering. So we appreciate all those who are calling for peaceful resolution, and without playing around, they must start a peace deal, just like they did with TPLF, and settle this serious war in Oromia and make Ethiopia a peaceful country for all Ethiopians. That's all I'm going to say for today. Thank you for joining me. I will be back with other news and update. So long and be safe, everyone.